All right. Hello, everybody. How you doing? Okay. I hope you're good. A while ago, we looked at GDP and GDP per capita. Where we said GDP is the market value of all officially recognized final goods and services produced within a country. And we said GDP per capita is the market value of all officially recognized goods and services produced within a country per person. All right. So let's make this distinction. Per capita means per person. So you always have to divide by the population. So I remember giving an example that anytime you talk about per capita, I gave an example that assuming I gave you $1,000 to share, all right, among your class, if you have 20 students in the class, what you have to do is you have to divide $1,000 by 20, all right? And whatever the result is, okay, becomes the per capita. Is that okay? So that should be $50 per capita. That means each person is going to get $50, and that is per capita. So for per capita, always the population goes to the bottom. Okay, good. And then we also looked at how we can establish proportions with GDP, okay, and population. Is that okay? So that was the process we went through, how we can, put the information side by side, cross product, and find the missing value. And then we looked at debt, deficit, surplus, and savings, okay, and we're able to establish the distinction between deficit and a debt. Now, let me recap that. So a deficit, let me use an example. So if your income is $1,000, all right, and at the end of the month, your expenses is $1,200, you are running a deficit of what? $200. So you have to do income minus expenses, and that will give you a negative value. So you have a deficit of $200. Now, an accumulated deficit becomes what? A debt. Gucci? Right. Now, on the flip side, we want to talk about surplus and savings. Now, if your income is $1,000, and at the end of the month, your expenditure or your expenses is $800, you have a surplus of what? $200. So we did income minus expenses, and that gave us a positive value of $200. So you have a surplus of $200. An accumulated surplus becomes what? Savings. Is that okay? Good. All right. So for our next discussion, as you can see on your screen, we're going to be talking about inflation. And inflation is a general rise of prices of goods and services in an economy over time. And the CPI is a monthly number that reflects the changes in the prices paid by urban consumers for a representative basket of goods and services. Okay, I'm sure you may be wondering, why do you need this? This is really very important. All right, it is very important for you to know how the economy is doing and how the impact of the economy on your daily life as a citizen of a country. Is that okay? So every country or the managers of the country expects that inflation remains as stable as possible. Is that okay? If inflation is stable, the good thing is individuals and even the government, all right, and businesses can plan. Is that okay? Assuming you went to the grocery store to buy a loaf of bread, all right, for $1. And then the next day or days after you went, and that same size of bread has increased to $5. Okay, I'm sure you will not be happy. All right, so because inflation affects the price, the general price of goods and services, it is important that you know the impact of inflation on your daily life as a citizen of a country. Okay, so the difference between inflation is usually measured, inflation and consumer CPI is that inflation is usually measured over a year, right? But CPI is the price variation in a month. All right, let's go ahead. So now we want to look at this data set, and basically this is the table you see right here. All right, this is the CPI table, and it starts from 1977 all the way to 2017, and we're going to be using these values. Okay, so watch out for this table. And let me also mention that we are on pages 41. Okay, so flip over to pages 41 of your test, and let's get this discussion going. All right, nice. Now, what you see, it says, what is the trend of values in the table? What does this mean for you? All right, you could realize that this has an increasing trend. Okay, the average price of goods and services are also increasing, okay, over time. All right, now this is an example that we are going to look at. And these two things you see here, these are two different setups that you can use to arrive at the same point. All right, your result will be the same. You either go by that or that. And I remember we dealt with that under proportions. All right, so you either use cost vertically, CPI vertically, or cost across and CPI across. Either way, you get the same result. All right. So let's look at how we can simplify this problem. Okay, so if we want to go by this, this is how the setup is. So in 1979, a McDonald's hamburger cost 38 cents. What does that equate to in 2015 dollars? So we want to know how, if we adjust for inflation, what will be the cost of a McDonald's hamburger in 2015, and the cost should be around $1.24. Is that okay? Now let's see how we did that. How did we do this? Now you look at the table. Okay. So I'm going to use both setups to get this right. So we're just going to fill in. So if you look at this table right here, let me get my pen up. Okay, CPI for 2015, what is the value? That is 237. 237.017. Okay, and CPI in 1979 is 72.6. Okay, these values are coming from the table on pages 41. Okay, so from here, what do? You cross product. All right, so you either use this setup or you use this setup. Either way, you get the same answer. So if you decide to use this, or you use that, okay, either way, you have the same result. Gucci? All right, so that is how we're going to use this to set up our proportions. So let's take another example and see. Now, according to the National Center for Education Statistics, the annual salary for a college graduate in 1983 was $25,000. Okay, what would a comparable starting salary that keeps up with inflation be in 2013? All right, so we have to set up what? Proportions. So here, what are we talking about? So we have to include CPI, okay, and we are talking about salary, okay? So we have to do CPI 1983 and then we have salary 1983. Okay, and we have CPI, which here are we looking at? We're looking at CPI 2013, and we want the salary in 2013. Okay, so we have a proportion established. Now, what don't we know? We want to find what a comparable salary will be in 2013. So that will be our X. Okay, so you go to the table. What is the CPI for 1983? 1983 is, we have 9.6, okay, over CPI for 2013 is 232.957, and then equal sign, and we have the salary for 1983 to be 25,000, and then we divide by X. Now from here, what do? We cross product and find our X, and this is how you set this up. Is that okay? And that's it. So, and this table will be given to you all the time, okay? CPI values will be given to you if you have to simplify or do a problem like this. And so we're going to now do the same thing for what would a comparable starting salary have been at the end of 1977. So really, what are you doing? You're comparing 1983 and 1977. Is that okay? And that would have been a comparable salary in 1977. Okay, so these values are coming from the CPI table. Okay, these values are coming from the CPI table. Okay, good. Note closely. All right, sweet. All right, so suppose a 20-ounce soda cost 25 cents in 1977. What would a comparable cost in 2015 be? Okay, so again, we have CPI, and then we have the cost of soda right there. So what you do is you have CPI for 1977, and then the cost of the soda. Okay, so I'll do costs 1977, and I'll do CPI, okay, 2015, and then costs 2015. Okay, if I do this, it helps me to know where to place what. Okay, and now that I have the setup, what do I want? We want the cost in 2015. We don't know that, so I'll say that is my X. So 1977 has a CPI of 60.6. Okay, 2015 has a CPI of 237.017. Okay, and then the cost, because this is in cents, we have to change that to $1, and that is what? 0.25. And we have X. We cross product and find the cost of that. Okay, and this is our result. So the cost of soda in 2015 should be $98. Is that okay? Now, if you look at the two, you realize that my setup, this setup is different from what I used. All right, but like we looked at in the slide before, the setups can differ. All right, but at the end of the day, you should get the same result. So you either look at CPI and cost of the same year across, and CPI and the cost the same year across, or you look at it vertically. All right, either way, you get the same result, and that is that. All right, are you Gucci? All right, sweet. Let's go to the next. Now here, we want to find the federal debt per capita for 2000. Okay, it says federal debt is the amount of the federal government's outstanding debt issued by the Treasury and other federal government agencies in the year 2000, the federal debt was such a huge amount of money, right? With a population of 281 million. Now, we want to find the federal debt per capita for the year 2000. And we know that per capita means what? Per person. And we always have to let the population go to the bottom. Is that okay? So we divide the debt by the population. And that should give us the debt per capita as 20,192.8. Is that okay? Sweet. Now use the table to estimate what the federal debt per capita would be in the year 2010 when adjusted for inflation, only since the year 2000. So you have to look at 2000, okay, and 2010. So you have to look at CPI, okay, 2000, okay, and then you have to look at the debt per capita. Okay, so let me do debt per capita, okay, and the debt per capita in 2000, and then you do CPI 2010 and the debt per capita in 2010, okay? You establish your proportion. Is that okay? Now, what would be, it says federal debt per capita would be in the year 2010. So we want to look at the debt per capita in 2010, which we don't know, so we say that is our X. Now you look at the CPI, you go to the CPI table. What's the CPI for 2000? And the debt already given in 2000, okay? And you put these side by side and find your X. Is that okay? All right, Gucci, Gucci. All right, let's go to the next. Now, so the actual debt has grown to this. We want to compute the federal debt per capita in 2010. So we divide the debt in 2010 by the population, and that gives us the debt per capita, right? What could you conclude by comparing these values? All right, so federal debt per capita has outpaced inflation. All right, nice. Now, let's look at this data set. This is minimum wage in the state of Indiana by selected year. All right, so we have from 1968 to 2017. Now, what is the current minimum wage in Indiana? Do you know that? You should, man. That is 7.25 per hour. All right, and what is the ratio of the current minimum wage to that of 1979? All right, the current minimum wage is 7.25 to that of 1979 is $2. So you have to do the ratio of that. So that means that 7.25 divided by $2, and that is what? 3.625. Okay, so it is 3.625 times higher than 1979. So forgive me, this should be 1979. Okay, so make sure you correct that. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Now, use the CPI table to determine whether minimum wage has kept up with inflation since 1979. Okay, so what you have to do is that you need to do the setup. Is that okay? So really what we did here, okay, let me look verbal, so let me try to simplify that. So you have to do, I'm doing for C, okay, you have to do CPI 1979. Meant to write CPI. Okay, so CPI 1979, okay, over CPI 2017, okay, is equal to Okay, and then so basically that is how you go about it, and then you have to compare, put the cost for 1979 and then the cost for 2017, just like the earlier setups. Okay, and you know that your x is right here. You put in the remaining values and then you solve for that. Is that right? Nice. All right, so basically that is all we have to look at under inflation and CPI. Okay, very interesting concept. Is that right? So for these practice problems, I'm just going to pop these answers out, think through them, try them on your own, and compare your answers. All right, when you are through, and see how you did. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So these are practice problems for you to look at, and kindly let me know if you have any concerns, any questions on any of these. All right. So basically, that is all we need to cover under federal debt per capita and inflation and CPI. Okay. All right. Sweet. So on this note, I would want to thank you very much for your time, and I will see you soon. All right. Good luck. Bye.